Hey everybody, Preston Poulter here with Pocket Jacks Comics, and I want to do a response here to an article on Screen Rant. Came out just today. Are Marvel and DC Comics really close to failing? The article's a little long-winded, so I'll kind of condense it for you. Essentially, they say that there's been a lot of people saying negative things about the comic industry, and if you're on YouTube a lot and you found this video, I'm sure you've already heard most, if not all of it. It does provide a pretty cool graph here, so having a science background, I love me some graphs. So are comic book sales declining? I can look at this graph and say, yes. So 1997, on this axis we have estimate unit sales in millions. So in 1997 we had the high point of 100 million, and from there it's just gone down. We had a big decline down to like 65. Ooh, that's a rough one. And then we can't, but you notice we don't seem to, each peak here seems to be almost kind of going under the next one, right? So where do we peak here at around 85? And then I guess we break through it a little bit, but then come back down, and now we're starting another decline. So at no point are we expanding above 100 or even really in danger of challenging it. So yes, comic book sales are in decline. And the article does talk about, does point some fingers at Marvel for making it so difficult for comic retailers to stay in business, because it talks about, back when I was growing up, and you just had titles that would just, get numbered, Amazing Spider-Man 350, 351, 352, and then if you're a comic book retailer, and you're like, how many issues of Amazing Spider-Man 352 do I need to order? Well, how many of 350 and 351 sold? And that could just kind of be your guide. But when the publishers, Marvel in this case, are playing shell games and going, oh wait, that title went away, but here's a new title, you have to speculate and go, well gosh, Gwenpool went away, but West Coast Avengers, how many of that should I order? And then you buy a bunch of West Coast Avengers, and then when that title goes away, they're like, oh, sorry you lost your money on there, but here's a new number one. And so it makes it hell for the retailers, and the article does admit that. So good on you, Screen Rant, for pointing that out. And it then goes on to say that, Marvel and DC are not going away, which I have to agree with, right? Because Marvel is owned by Disney, and DC is owned by some other major media conglomerate, and those companies don't want comics to vanish forever, although I could see them certainly reorganizing and paring it down dramatically. So that may be in the cards. But the real paragraph here that we need to pay attention to is the closing one. So let me take you down there. Because it's talking about, all right, up here it says, gosh, this direct sales market is so dated. And all right, here, let me point this paragraph out, because it goes, in order to purchase a comic book, a prospective reader has to go out of their way to find a local comic book retailer that happens to stock the book they're interested in. This kind of approach poses significant barriers to casual readers who are thinking of dipping their toe into comics. What's more, pricing doesn't help. Most comics sell between $3.99 and $5.99 with a single issue. Assuming this potential reader actually goes to the comic book store, they'll find themselves bombarded with options and frankly able to afford only one or two of them. From there, it kind of goes on to say, oh gosh, comic books, who wants to really go to the physical store anyway? And in fact, now we'll go down here to the concluding paragraph, which is where we get, in truth, the comic book industry isn't really in crisis. It's more that it's undergoing a period of dramatic disruption, with both the publishers and the retailers struggling to work out how best to operate in the modern world. That doesn't mean the comic book publishers are in any danger of going bust. Reports that Disney and Warner Brothers are considering shutting down Marvel and DC Comics are complete nonsense, with no supporting evidence behind them at all. Rather, it means they're going to need to experiment and deviate from the traditional direct market model. DC Comics feel to be the trailblazer right now, but even they haven't quite cracked it. Whoever works out the right approach first will surely become the market leader. So it's basically saying, hey, they'll work something out. We don't know what. I mean, at the same time, it's kind of obvious, right? Like, let's look at the music business. You know, back in the 90s, there were record stores anywhere. You don't see record stores anymore. You've got people like Macklemore making music on their computer in their basement. They put it up on iTunes. People like me go and buy the Macklemore album. It goes to my phone. There was no need to involve another party other than Macklemore, iTunes, and me, right? But comic books are a little different. People want, the physical stuff. So I feel there will always be some demand for a place where you can go and buy physical comic books. So the idea that this article seems to be suggesting that comic book stores are going to vanish also seems to be missing the point. There will always be nerds out there who will be buying merch, whether that's Magic the Gathering cards, D&D books, Warhammer 40k models, or comic books. So there will always be some product mix. Now, could it be that maybe comic books are just going to fall out of that product mix, but there will still be stores where teenage boys gather to blow money their parents gave them on geeky merchandise. The idea that comic book stores are going to vanish, no. I mean, well, okay. The geeky stores are going to vanish. Maybe they won't be selling comic books, but I mean, if Marvel and DC aren't going to go away, well, there's no reason to think that there won't be some offering of comic book stores at these geeky retailers. Now, there's a third party which is just mentioned in passing in this article, and that's Diamond. Right now, Marvel and DC send Diamond, and then Diamond sends to the stores. But the level of stores is declining, right? It's went from 3,000 down to around, 1,900? Meanwhile, the technology for managing data, that just keeps getting easier, right? All these computers and software that's put out by Oracle. I remember back when I was managing my dad's business, Offware makes this small business platform called NetSuite. Now, obviously, Marvel and DC wouldn't need a small business. I think they're big enough. What's Diamond doing? What value is Diamond adding? I haven't run into a single party yet who said, Diamond Distribution, those guys are awesome. I love working with them. Everyone has a bad thing to say about them. And if the whole industry is in decline and they're desperately searching for some way to get out of it, how about we just cut out the middleman, right? How about Marvel and DC just set up their little internet portals and comic book retailers go and they have their little account numbers and they log into the portals and they just order it directly, and then Marvel and DC either fulfill it in-house or maybe farm out the fulfillment, but then we've cut out the middleman and passed the profits on to the retail stores. Because if we agree Marvel and DC maybe are going to undergo reorganization, but they're not going to vanish, and the geeky stores aren't going to vanish, who's the odd man out in this equation? Who's the company nobody seems to have a good word for? I remember listening to that video Peter Simeti put out where he's talking about how, it seems like things are hard for Diamond Distribution right now because they are nitpicking his shipments, like, oh, he didn't quite put the right barcode on it, or this one was mislabeled, and we're going to fine you $150. Can you imagine working with a company that is like, okay, send us your product to sell. We didn't like how you shipped it to us. That'll be extra. I mean, that's a pure extortion business. That is what is eventually going to end up on the chocolate box. So you mark my words. What this article is failing to mention, but what Peter Simeti and I am now hinting at, is that Diamond Distribution eventually will be the one that goes the way of the dodo. And that's why I, as a comic book creator entering into this market, am not looking towards Diamond Distribution. I feel it's chasing an outdated model. Eventually that company is going to fail. So meanwhile, focus on Kickstarter and Indiegogo as a way of just internet distribution. And that's essentially what Marvel and DC are just going to go towards. Instead of using Diamond, they're just going to use internet distribution, and comic book stores will buy from them, as will people like you and me. Although obviously the comic book stores will get a pretty hefty discount. And again, there's all kinds of software that makes that so easy now. So anyway, I am doing right now, again, a Kickstarter for White Lily issue 2 in sketchcover. There'll be a link for that down in the description, as was this article. If you want to read it, I would encourage you to do so. And White Lily issue 3 is coming up next month. By the way, also on my channel, if you poke around, you'll find the music video that we made for Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. I invested a lot of time and resources into that for a good 3.5 minutes of your entertainment. I hope you like it. So, thank you very much. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get up to 100 subscribers. Thank you very much. Take care.